They left 340 souls to die. The deafening crack of machine guns mingled with the static hum of the radio. Broken pleas for help echoed through the chaos of gunfire, then fell silent. In the command center, Lieutenant Rachel Monroe stood frozen, her eyes glued to the tactical screen where green dots flickered out, one by one. Her superiors called it acceptable losses, but to Rachel, those were the men and women she'd eaten with, flown with, laughed with. When the door of duty slammed shut under orders, she opened another unauthorized, solitary, with no way back. And from that moment, the Helmand battlefield would remember her name as the one who pulled 340 souls from the jaws of hell. But what drives a person to touch what no one is allowed to? The scorching desert wind swept across the runway at Forward Operating Base 4 Delta, carrying the acrid smell of burning fuel and metal. Above, the midday sun was shattered by the relentless boom of explosions echoing from the east. The control tower began losing signals from Bravo 2's recon team. Voices overlapped, choked with static. "They're firing from 3 sides, we can't see a way out of ammo, need support now." In the command room, no one dared look up. Everyone heard, but pretended they didn't. A new order crackled through. No sorties. No air support. Major Cole Bradford, a man with a wrestler's build and a gleaming shaved head, leaned against the table, holding a cold cup of coffee. 340 Marines aren't worth risking choppers and pilots, he said, his voice flat as a weather report. Acceptable losses. In the corner, Lieutenant Rachel Monroe said nothing. Her brown hair tied back tightly, her sunburned face set, her deep green eyes locked on the tactical screen, where green dots, the symbols of Marines, faded one by one. Each vanishing dot tightened her chest. She tried to speak. "Sir, if we deploy a Huey from the northeast, we could." Bradford cut her off with a smirk. You think you're leading this, Monroe? You're a supply pilot, not a combat flyer. Leave this to the men." The room erupted in laughter. Some glares were hostile, others indifferent. She was used to it. Recruited for a diversity program, Rachel spent her days flying supplies, wiping down storage units, and logging what others discarded. Here, female pilots existed to prove the military was changing, but no one truly believed they could do more. Outside, the explosions grew louder. A communications officer turned. "Sir, they're pinned in a ravine. 3 sides are high slopes. Without air support in the next 40 minutes, they'll die," Rachel said softly. Bradford spun around, his gray eyes cold. "What did you just say?" I said, "We can't wait. Are you challenging my orders?" Silence. In the thick air of fear and cowardly authority, Rachel felt her heart pound, not from fear but from rage. She knew that terrain. She'd flown over it dozens of times on supply runs. A wind gap could hide a chopper below 15 meters. If someone dared to fly low and crazy enough, they could reach them. The radio crackled again, weaker now. "Air support, this is Bravo Actual. We're down to half strength. Heavy casualties. Repeating, need support now. Anyone? Please hear us." Bradford reached over and switched off the radio. "Enough. No need to hear more. Someone get me the casualty report." That soft click shattered something in Rachel. She stood, saying nothing, grabbing her small notebook from the table. A few glances followed her, but no one stopped her. Outside, the noon air burned. The horizon shimmered in the haze. She opened her notebook to a page of old notes, wind maps, ravine coordinates, and a penciled scrawl. "If no one flies, I will." From a distance, the hum of a helicopter's engine rose, the clearest sound she'd ever heard in her life. Rachel looked up, her green eyes flashing with resolve. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "At some point, you choose between orders and conscience. Only one saves lives." She turned, not toward the briefing room, but toward Hangar 7, where broken birds lay waiting to die. Because sometimes, to save others, you must be ready to become the traitor. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, Take a moment to relax and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. The Afghan sun scorched the runway, as if melting the air itself. Rachel walked quickly, her back slick with sweat, her heart pounding with each distant explosion. Every echo was a life slipping away. No one watched her. No one asked where she was going. At this base they were used to Rachel fading into silence. She moved along the western warehouses, toward Hangar 7, tucked away and abandoned after failed maintenance attempts. A rusted sign hung loosely, the metal door creaking in the wind. Pushing it open, the smell of old oil and iron dust hit her, a familiar scent of machines that had lived and died here. In the narrow light filtering through the door's cracks, a low, gravelly voice spoke. "I knew you'd show up." Elena Cruz, the only maintenance tech who spoke to Rachel with respect, crouched beside a tarp-covered heap, her sunburned face streaked with grease. Her eyes gleamed like steel. "Your message," Rachel said quietly. "Is it true?" Elena pursed her lips, then yanked off the tarp. Beneath a layer of dust was a UH-1 Huey, its paint faded, its body patched with old welds. A rotor blade was broken. The engine hatch gaped open, a carcass waiting to be scrapped. Elena stood, wiping her hands on a rag. "You know, I was ordered to strip it for parts. But I couldn't. This bird flew in Fallujah. Its last flight pulled soldiers out of fire." She paused, locking eyes with Rachel. "I'm guessing today it'll do that again." Rachel stepped forward, her fingers brushing the scarred hull. The paint was cool under the Sunday. "Does the engine still work?" "Not sure. Fuel valves stuck, hydraulics are leaking, the governor's nearly shot." "How long to make it fly?" Elena gave a half smile. "For a normal person, 3 days. For a lunatic like you, maybe 45 minutes. The words were light, but they carried agreement. No more orders were needed. The two women bent down, racing against death. The clank of tools echoed in the empty space. Sweat dripped onto the concrete, mixing with dust and oil. Rachel worked from memory, every pipe, every bolt, as if she'd been part of this machine. "Elena, check the hydraulic oil pressure," she said. "If it's below 1,500 pounds per square inches, we'll crash mid-flight." "Got it." The tech pulled a valve, checked the gauge, and squinted. 1,470. Not pretty. Good enough to take off. I've flown with less. Elena glanced at her, curious. "You talk like you've flown a Huey for real." Rachel paused, her eyes drifting to the sky outside. "My dad flew these. He said a Huey was the most honest bird ever built. It doesn't hide anything if you know how to listen." A silence settled. Outside, the gunfire echoed. Elena pursed her lips. "Then listen, Monroe. Make it speak again." They fired the engine. It coughed, then stalled. Once, twice. On the third try, a hoarse roar erupted, black smoke spewing from the exhaust. The main rotor spun slowly, then faster. Each turn shook the hangar. "You're kidding me," Elena shouted over the noise. "It's alive." Rachel only smiled, her eyes fixed on the controls. "I told you, we just needed it to believe it could fly." She checked the gauges, everything teetered on the edge of danger but was viable. Enough to take off, not enough to come back. Elena understood but said nothing. She watched Rachel strap in, attach the radio, and load medical supplies. "You know this is insane. Bradford will have your head." Rachel tightened her harness. "If I don't go, there'll be no one left to hang." "Then go, Angel," Elena said softly. "I'll keep comms for the first 5 minutes. After that, you're on your own." Rachel nodded. Her green eyes gleamed through the dust. She pulled the throttle. The engine roared. Dust swirled. Hangar 7's doors rattled as the Huey rose from the ground, its old blades screaming like a machine's soul awakened. On the internal frequency, Elena's voice came through one last time. "Fly safe, Monroe. And don't forget, don't let them say you can't." Rachel pushed the stick, the chopper's nose dipped, and it shot out of the hangar, cutting through the desert's scorching wind. The base alarms blared. The control tower's voice crackled over the radio. "Unidentified aircraft from Hangar 7. Halt immediately. Repeat. Halt now." But Rachel didn't answer. Ahead, only the sun-blurred horizon and smoke rising from the valley of death awaited. For the first time in her life, she wasn't flying for orders. She was flying for conscience. The cockpit air was thick as smoke. Sunlight poured through the cracked windshield, casting flickering fire-like streaks across Rachel's face. The speedometer jittered, the engine howling like an old beast forced to run. She kept the altitude at 12 meters, lower than the surrounding dunes, the chopper's shadow blending with the earth. From behind, Elena's voice came through a private frequency. "Angel, you're flying too low. Wind sensors show heavy turbulence east." "I know," Rachel replied curtly. "If I go higher, they'll spot me." She switched to the emergency channel. Static buzzed, mixed with explosions and shouts. "Bravo Actual to any station, we're almost out of ammo. Anyone hear us?" Rachel pressed the mic. "Chaos 33, this is Angel Flight. I'm coming. Hold your position." A few seconds of silence, then a hoarse voice, disbelieving. "Angel Flight, you're coming? Who authorized this?" "No one," Rachel said, eyes fixed on the flight path. "But I'm coming." The eastern ravine's winds whipped violently. She tilted the stick, the Huey shaking hard. Cliffs loomed on both sides, barely 20 meters apart. A single crosswind could slam her into stone. Rachel lowered the rotors, holding torque steady. The engine screamed. A sharp pop rang out behind her, metal cracking. The hydraulic oil warning lit up. "Elena," she called softly through the radio. "We just lost secondary pressure." "How much?" "About 20%. "Damn. But you've still got control. For now." She rounded a bend, the Huey tilting nearly 45 degrees. Sand pelted the windshield. In that moment, she glimpsed at black smoke rising from the Helmand Valley. She was too close to turn back. Ahead, machine gun flashes sparked on the ridgeline. The Taliban had seen her. Green tracer rounds tore across her vision, streaking toward the Huey. Metal clanged as bullets struck the hull. The warning panel glowed red. A round pierced the door, grazing her shoulder, leaving a scorched streak. Rachel didn't flinch. She yanked the stick, jinking sharply, using the headwind to drop even lower. The chopper skimmed the ravine floor. Sand blasted upward, obscuring her view. "Angel Flight approaching," she shouted into the radio. "Bravo, confirm colored smoke. Red smoke. Red smoke at coordinates 42 Sierra Whiskey Echo." Instantly, a vivid red plume rose from the valley. She banked toward it, nose down, speed doubling. The wind slammed the glass, shaking the controls violently. As she cleared the final ridge, the sight stole her breath. The Helmand Valley, a sea of fire. Over a dozen armored vehicles burned, smoke rising hundreds of meters. Below, tiny, bloodied figures huddled under a hail of bullets. Amid the chaos, a tattered American flag stood planted in scorched earth. "God," she whispered. An RPG streaked toward her, trailing white smoke from the ridge. Rachel reacted on instinct, banking left, pulling the stick, the Huey rolling sideways and diving. The rocket skimmed past the tail, exploding behind. The blast threw her against the panel, her knee slamming into metal. Alarms wailed. "Angel, you still good?" Elena yelled through the radio. Rachel gasped. Still alive. Not sure for how long. She looked down. The Marines were raising their rifles, staring at the battered Huey diving toward them. They thought it was a mirage. Rachel eased the stick, slowing sharply. The Huey dropped, nearly kissing the ground in a swirl of dust. The Marines rushed forward, signaling. She shouted through the external speaker, "Load the wounded first. Hurry, I can't stay longer than 30 seconds." 2 Marines ran up, dragging bloodied casualties. Bullets whizzed around them. A mortar round landed 10 meters away, exploding, hurling sand and shrapnel. The rotors tilted, the chopper wobbling. Rachel gripped the stick, her arms trembling against the force. "You've got to go now," Elena screamed. "No, not while they've got men on the ground." Another group of Marines rushed up. 3, then 4 men were hauled aboard. A young man looked up at her, eyes wide with awe. "Who are you?" "The last person you wanted to see today," Rachel said dryly. "Hold them tight." The fuel gauge blinked. The engine howled. A second RPG streaked toward the left side. She had 2 seconds. Rachel slammed the stick, pulling full power. The Huey lurched upward, a white smoke trail tearing the air below. The explosion flung debris, knocking a Marine still clinging to the door. Screams, smoke, and rotor noise fused into chaos. She gritted her teeth, maxing the throttle, escaping the valley by inches. Behind, the fires burned. Ahead, the control tower fell silent. The first rescue was a success, but over 300 souls still waited. The Huey crash-landed on a pad behind the field hospital. The engine screamed, black smoke pouring from the exhaust as if the old bird was gasping its last. As the skids touched down, Rachel hadn't even shut off the engine before medics swarmed in. Marines were carried out, blood trailing across the sand. A nurse shouted, "My God, who flew this thing? It's about to blow!" Rachel unstrapped, leaping out. Rotor wash whipped her hair and dust, hiding her face. A medic grabbed her arm, pulling her from the cockpit. "You've got to get away from that chopper. It's leaking fuel. Save them first." Rachel cut in, her voice hoarse. "I'm going back." Her words stunned him. "Going back? What are you?" But Rachel was already climbing back into the cockpit. At the command center, the news hit like a grenade. The radio room buzzed with shouts. "Unauthorized aircraft landed at Pad 3. It's the Huey from Hangar 7. God Almighty, who approved a sortie?" Bradford stormed in like a hurricane. "Cut all comms. I want that pilot's name in 5 seconds." A sergeant fumbled through records. "Sir, no active logs. But there's an old signature. Shadow 71. Bradford froze. That name Shadow 71 had been erased from the system 4 years ago, after a blood-soaked mission no one spoke of. "No way," he muttered. "She was scrubbed from the roster." Another officer turned, whispering, "Sir, if it's Monroe, she just pulled 8 men out of Helmand." Bradford smashed his coffee mug on the table, shattering it. "I don't need heroes. I need discipline." At the landing pad, Rachel checked the gauges. Fuel was at 25%. The secondary hydraulics were near critical. Warning lights still flashed red. Elena's voice came through, trembling. "Angel, I just heard command they're sending interceptors to stop you." "I know. You can't go back. The chopper won't survive another run. If I don't go, they die." A pause. Elena took a deep breath. "If you're doing this, I'll guide your winds again. But only for 10 minutes. Then I'll be caught." 10 minutes is enough. "Thanks, Cruz." Rachel looked west. The sky burned red with the fires of war. She gripped the stick, restarting the Huey. The engine roared angrily, like a beast forced to live. A group of nearby Marines noticed her. One shouted, "Hey, you crazy? Command ordered that bird grounded." Rachel didn't answer. She lowered her helmet, locked her harness. On its side, the light caught a faded silver inscription. "Night Stalkers don't quit." The rotors spun. Sand swirled like a storm. A soldier shielded his eyes, yelling, "She's taking off. Someone stop her." From the tower, Bradford's voice boomed over the intercom. "Huey at Pad 3, stand down. That's a direct order. You'll be court-martialed for insubordination. The wind drowned it all. Rachel only whispered, almost to herself, "You don't get it. I'm not flying for your orders." The Huey lifted, swaying in the desert wind, then shot east back to the burning valley. In the cockpit, every sound faded. The fuel gauge dropped, her heartbeat sinking with the rotors. Elena's voice remained steady. Winds shifting north 10 degrees. Hold 20 meters altitude. If you feel a hard shake, it's a cold front. Fly through, don't dodge. Roger. Rachel. Elena hesitated. If you don't come back, I just want to say, I've never seen anyone braver. It's not bravery, Elena. I just can't stand watching them die when I know I can do something. An explosion echoed. Rachel looked up, spotting a new smoke column. She knew the Taliban had found her approach. They'd be waiting. But she held her course. Speed climbing. The wind battered the glass, the old rotors shrieking like a bird with broken wings. At the command center, Bradford watched her blip fade on the radar. He roared, "Cut comms, she's suicidal." But a young technician shook his head, eyes locked on the screen. "No, sir, she's dropping altitude. Heading back to Helmand." The room fell deathly silent. At the same moment, in the cockpit, Rachel saw the fiery horizon again. She took a deep breath, fingers on the controls, whispering, "Run 2, here we go." And the old Huey dove, plunging into the storm of bullets waiting below. Some battles need no witnesses. They only need someone who dares to fly. The Huey's rotors thumped like the heartbeat of the battlefield. Rachel dropped altitude, skimming just meters above the dunes. Thick black smoke marked the Helmand Valley where 340 souls were trapped between fire and steel. The radio crackled. Then Thompson's voice came through, raw and desperate. "Angel Flight, we're still here. Enemies closing in." Rachel gripped the stick. "I hear you, Thompson. Hold tight. I'll clear a path." Behind her, the control panel flashed red again. The secondary hydraulics had dropped to 40%. She leaned right, forcing the massive machine to obey. The Huey shuddered like it might break apart. But through the wind, she heard her father's voice, steady and distant. "When you're in hell, don't stop. That's where you belong." She shot over the ravine's edge, spotting flashes Taliban fighters firing at the last blue dots on her mental map. An RPG launched, its white smoke tracing a deadly arc. Rachel jerked the stick, hugging the cliff, dodging by inches. The rocket exploded behind, rocking the Huey. Below, the Marines cheered as they saw her return. "Angel Flight's back. She's actually crazy." She crash-landed, nearly plowing into the ground. Sand and dust swirled in a storm, rotors screaming. "Fast. 8 critical wounded first," she shouted through the external speaker. They dragged themselves aboard, blood and smoke mixing. A sergeant stared at her. "You scared?" Rachel replied softly. "Not scared. Just scared of being late." As the door closed, a burst of bullets raked the tail. The speedometer shook. The engine roared hoarsely. Rachel pulled the stick, lifting off. The Marines below fired back, covering her ascent. She flew against the wind, heart pounding. Her left arm ached from an old wound. Each move was agony, but she held course, guiding the battered iron bird into the sky. At Fob Fort Delta, the command center was chaos. Every screen showed drone footage, a battered Huey, riddled with holes, pulling souls from hell. Bradford stormed in, furious. "Who's flying that damn thing?" A young lieutenant stammered. "Sir, we found an old signal in the archives. It matches Shadow 71. The room went silent. Colonel Mitchell, the base's highest commander, turned slowly. "Say that again." "Sir, Shadow 71. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe, 160th SOAR. Night Stalkers. Her record was erased in 2019. Bradford paled. "Impossible. She's just a supply pilot." Mitchell cut him off, voice like ice. She was a special ops pilot, the only survivor of Takur Gar. We buried her in logistics for politics. The room froze. On the screen, the Huey weaved through a hail of bullets. Smoke trailing. Mitchell said softly as if for the whole base. Shadow 71 is back. Bradford stood rigid, then barked at the techs. Call her back now. An officer replied, voice tight. Sir, she's bringing 8 wounded back. And going again. Bradford slammed the table. She'll die. And drag this unit down with her. Mitchell didn't look away from the screen. No, Major? She's doing what you didn't dare. She's fighting. Rachel landed again at the medical pad. Her face was caked with dust, dried blood streaking her cheek. She didn't leave the cockpit. Medics rushed forward. A nurse yelled, My God, you can't fly anymore, this thing's falling apart. Rachel said only, There are still men down there. A young Marine touched her shoulder, eyes full of awe and fear. You're Shadow 71. For real? Rachel met his gaze, nodding slightly. Yeah, but today, I'm just the ambulance driver. She pulled the stick, restarting the Huey. The engine coughed in protest, then roared like it was summoned from the grave. Elena's voice crackled. Rachel, you've pushed that bird past its limits. One more run. I'm not going back. I'm not done yet. Above Helmand, the old Huey took flight, its bullet-riddled body glinting in the dusk. At the fob, dozens of Marines stopped to watch. One whispered, Shadow 71. Night Stalkers don't quit. The phrase spread through radios, across the base. Those who'd mocked her now stood silent. And on the other side of the battlefield, amid burning dunes, Rachel leaned forward, diving into the ravine for the 3rd time. Legends aren't born in victory. They're forged in the returns others call suicide. The wind stung Rachel's face as the Huey swept back into the Helmand Valley for the 3rd time. The rotors screamed, a hoarse cry of a steel warrior on its last stand. The hydraulic pressure gauge hit red. The cockpit shook like it might explode. Elena's voice came through, taut as a wire. Rachel, that bird's wings are breaking. The secondary controls aren't responding. It'll respond, Rachel said, eyes fixed on the horizon. I just needed to hold for one more trip. Before her, the valley reappeared, hauntingly familiar. Smoke, fire, and the stench of burning metal mixed with the desert's heat. Below, tiny figures fought on, backs against the cliffs. They knew she'd return, and they held their ground, trusting in that alone. Rachel dropped lower. Bullets raked the hull, sparking metal. A round pierced the windshield, grazing her cheek. Hot blood ran down her collar, but she didn't blink. Angel Flight, we're still here. Thompson's voice broke through the radio. Got you, Rachel replied. I'm coming. The Huey descended, kicking up a sandstorm. Marines rushed out, dragging wounded. An RPG exploded behind, shrapnel flying. A piece lodged deep in Rachel's left shoulder, piercing her flight suit. She flinched, breath ragged, but held the stick. Elena screamed, Rachel, you're hit! Pull out! Rachel shut her eyes, voice hoarse. No. They're still down there. She gripped the stick, lifting the Huey a few meters, steady enough for the last man to climb aboard. A young Marine looked up, eyes wide with horror at the blood streaming from her neck. Ma'am, you're bleeding, Rachel said softly. Don't worry. I've been worse. The Huey lifted again, engine wheezing, black smoke pouring from the exhaust. She used both hands to hold the stick, her left arm trembling violently. The gearbox temperature spiked past limits, warning lights flashing like fireworks. But behind her, 8 Marines were alive. That was the only reason she didn't let go. At FOB 4 Delta, the command center was silent. Drone footage showed the tattered Huey weaving through a red sky, carrying wounded. No one spoke, only the hum of machines filled the air. A young tech said quietly, She's wounded, sir. Engine temps past 1,800 degrees. Colonel Mitchell nodded slowly. I know. We could send a rescue chopper. There are no others, he said, voice low. She's the only rescue. Bradford stood, sweat beading on his temples. If she dies out there, I'm not taking the blame. Mitchell turned, eyes like steel. You're not responsible. Because she's doing what her superiors should have. Dozens of Marines gathered around the screens. They didn't speak, only watched. Captain Hayes, a female pilot who'd once mocked Rachel, clutched her helmet, whispering, "Fly, Monroe, fly." In the valley, Rachel wrestled with a dying machine. Pressure dropped every second. She forced the stick, trying to lift the Huey above the firing range. An RPG exploded near the left side, slamming her into the seat. Her vision blurred, ears ringing. Angel flight. Answer. Thompson's voice crackled. Rachel hit the mic, gasping. Still here. Hold your position. I'm coming back again. Elena panted through the radio. Rachel, that bird can't take more. You've lost nearly all hydraulic fluid. It's still flying. You're not listening. One more landing, and it'll blow. Rachel gave a faint smile, voice weak. Then I'll blow with it. She looked out the window, seeing a wounded Marine struggle to his feet, raising a hand to salute her through the haze. She pressed her lips together. It was the salute only soldiers understood, a thank you beyond words. Hold on, Rachel shouted, pulling the stick with all her strength. The Huey shot over the ridge, escaping the kill zone, racing toward the base. The chopper shook violently. The speedometer plummeted, warning lights blazed. In the command center, a tech's voice broke. She's out of the fire zone. Sir. She made it. No one cheered. They only stared. Bradford looked down, eyes empty. Hayes dropped her helmet, tears streaming. Mitchell said softly, for all to hear, that's not just a pilot. That's a symbol. In the cockpit, Rachel gasped, blood staining the controls. She looked at the glowing panel, then out to the horizon. A faint smile crossed her lips. Thanks for holding on, old friend, she whispered to the Huey. We've still got work to do. A dying machine, a fading pilot, but courage never missed a beat. The Huey screamed like a beast in its death throes. Fire licked up from the tail, spreading along the hull. The fuel gauge hit zero, the main engine coughing black smoke. In the cockpit, the heat surged, Rachel's breaths matching the hoarse rotor thumps. Elena, she said, voice fading. I'm losing control. Hold 15 degrees, Rachel. If you overshoot, it'll spin. There's no 15 degrees left. I'm flying on feel. The cockpit lights flickered. Warning alarms dimmed not from stability, but from a dying electrical system. She fought to keep the Huey aloft a few more seconds. Below, the scarred earth glowed with firelight. Like stars in reverse, a hellish constellation. A loud explosion rocked the rear. The cabin shook violently, the panels sparking. A secondary rotor blade snapped off like a giant knife. The Huey tilted, losing balance. The world spun. Sky, earth, fire, blood blurred into one. Elena screamed through the headset. Rachel, listen to me. Eject now. No ejector, Elena. This Huey doesn't have one. Rachel, please. I've got 3 men here. I'm not leaving them. The chopper began to spiral. Rachel gritted her teeth, pulling the stick with her last strength. The G-force pinned her to the seat, blood spurting from her shoulder wound. Her knuckles cracked under the strain. She roared, pouring everything into her right hand. Come on. Just 1 more minute. The last light of day vanished. The Huey burned in the night sky, tracing a long fiery streak toward northern Helmand. At Fob Ford Delta, everyone saw the streak through the drone feed. A tech choked. She's down. Bradford stood pale, silent. Colonel Mitchell slowly removed his headset, cut all channels. Elena screamed. No, don't cut it. She's still out there. Cruise! Mitchell snapped. The chopper exploded. No one could survive. Elena shook her head, tears streaming. You don't know her. Shadow 71 doesn't die that easy. In the command room, dozens of eyes met in silence. Outside, the screen showed the Huey's final image vanishing in smoke. Only a chilling stillness remained. Somewhere in the sand and fire, Rachel opened her eyes. Everything was blurred, her ears ringing. She felt the searing heat from the smoldering wreck. A rotor blade was embedded in the ground meters away. She tried to move, pain nearly knocked her out. But she crawled, inch by inch, toward the cabin door. In the dark, she heard the faint breathing of a wounded Marine behind her. You alive? Rachel rasped, breath broken. So, are you? Don't sleep. She dragged him out, laying him behind a rock, then went back for the next. The night was brutally cold, the wind carrying the stench of oil and blood. She didn't know where she was, only that 4 men were still breathing. She looked at the black sky, searching for any sign of the base. Nothing but distant fire and silence. Her half-burned radio crackled. She tapped it. Static, then silence. Rachel closed her eyes. Her strength was gone. She lay back on the sand, still clutching a piece of the cockpit panel, a metal shard etched with faded silver. Night stalkers don't quit. She laughed softly, whispering to herself. I'm not quitting. Never. Then she slipped into darkness. At the fob, night cloaked everything. Elena stayed at the radio, refusing to leave. She whispered, Rachel, if you can hear me, answer. Silence. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Bradford stepped up, reaching to shut off the radio. Elena slapped his hand away. Don't. Just wait. As she spoke, a faint sound broke through a crackle, then a blurred, broken voice. Ford Delta. This is Shadow 71. I've got 3 survivors. Need evac now. The room exploded. Elena sobbed. Mitchell gripped his headset, voice shaking. Repeat signal. Say it again. Shadow 71. Wind mixed with ragged breathing. Shadow 71. Still flying. Then the signal died. Elena slumped over the console, tears mixing with the sound of sand rain outside. Bradford stood frozen, whispering, She's alive. In the battlefield, amid the steel-cold night, a small fire flickered where Rachel sheltered with 3 surviving Marines. She looked up at the faint stars, a deep breath, then a soft murmur. Still flying, even if I have to crawl. And in that night, in a land no one wanted to remember, a legend was reborn from the ashes. The desert wind howled through blackened dunes. Above Helmand, rescue chopper flares cast silver light on the burned husk of the Huey. On the internal radio, Elena's voice trembled. Raven team, this is Ford Delta. Shadow 71 is alive. Coordinates 14 degrees north, 64 degrees echo. Approach with caution, she's in Taliban-controlled territory. 4 Pavehawk choppers shot through the night like silver arrows. On the ground, Rachel leaned against a rock, eyes half open. 3 surviving Marines lay wrapped in blankets beside her. They breathed weakly, but they lived. She looked up at the moving lights. A tired smile flickered. Good. You boys are going home. From afar, the thump of engines grew. Rachel tried to stand, her body shaking from blood loss. She planted her last flare in the sand, pulling the pin. A red flame shot skyward, tearing through the dark. Figures dropped from the sky. PJ rescue operatives. They hit the ground, rolling, rifles raised. One shouted through his mic, This is Raven, we found Shadow 71. She's alive. Rachel smiled, then collapsed. Her hand still clutched the metal shard. Night stalkers don't quit. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, a young Marine hesitated, asking, Ma'am, how many did you save? Rachel panted, whispering, I stopped counting. I just know. I didn't leave anyone behind. FOB Ford Delta, 4:32 a.m. The base was silent. Dozens of Marines stood by the landing pad. When the rescue chopper's door opened, cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of oil and smoke. Elena ran up first, nearly falling beside the stretcher. Rachel opened her eyes, smiling faintly. "Told you," Rachel whispered. "That Huey could still fly." Elena laughed through tears. "No, you flew. The Huey just tried to keep up." Colonel Mitchell approached, removing his cap, standing at attention. Everyone around fell into line. Bradford, who'd mocked her, stood among them, eyes red. Mitchell leaned down, voice warm. "Lieutenant Rachel Monroe, you didn't just save 340 lives. You saved this unit's faith." Rachel smiled, breath uneven. "I just did what they should have done from the start." Bradford stepped forward, stopping by the stretcher. He tried to speak, but his voice caught. Finally, he managed 2 words. "I'm sorry." Rachel looked at him, no anger, only saying softly, "Don't apologize to me. Fly next time someone needs you." 3 days later, U.S. military news outlets ran the headline, "Shadow 71, the Angel of Helmand, the woman who flew 5 times through hell." The story spread across bases, social media, beyond borders. At the commendation ceremony, Rachel sat in a wheelchair, shoulder wrapped in white, camera flashes relentless. As Colonel Mitchell pinned the Distinguished Flying Cross to her chest, the crowd went silent. He spoke slowly, clearly. "Some fly for orders. Some fly for honor. But some fly because they can't bear to see others die. That's a hero." Applause thundered through the hall. Rachel looked around, catching Elena's radiant smile. That evening, Rachel returned to Hangar 7. The old shed was now just charred steel. On the ground, engineers were restoring what remained of the Huey. On its blackened hull, someone had repainted in white, "Shadow Phoenix. She flew so others may live." Rachel placed her hand on it. The night wind blew, light and cold. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Fly for those who can't." The next morning, at the coordination center, Elena tested the emergency frequency. A lone signal came through, not from a transmitter, but from an old device in Rachel's room. 3 words, repeating like a vow. "Shadow 71 still flying." Elena smiled, tears falling. "Yeah, I know. You never stopped." And somewhere, in a sky beyond human sight, a legend kept flying, not on steel wings, but on a heart that never bowed. The Helmand sky had gone quiet. No more gunfire, only the wind whispering through folded flags on the landing pad. But in a hidden corner of Fob 4 Delta, the story of Shadow 71 lived on. The charred Huey stood displayed in a new hangar. Each morning young Marines paused before it, not to admire but to remember. On its side a small plaque read, "She didn't fly for orders. She flew for those who couldn't." The press called her the Angel of Helmand, but in the military records, she was simply Captain Rachel Monroe, mission accomplished. She never sought glory. To her, the true title wasn't in medals, but in every heartbeat she pulled from hell. At night, Rachel sat alone, gazing at the black sky. A shooting star streaked by, blazing like a Huey's flight path. She smiled, whispering to herself, "Still flying, even if just in memory. Because people like her never vanish. They only slip beyond our sight and keep flying where courage needs no permission."